It was a busy weekend for the Gophers football team. 3 new commits, and we're diving in today.
Hey,
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator, and recruiting assistant here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Now, we've got some commits to talk about over on the football end, but welcome to the show if this is your first one. And if you are an everydayer and you tap in each and every day, you'll notice over on YouTube that we have a brand new graphics package headed for this podcast. We're going to spice it up. You've got all the topics over there on the sidebar so you can see what we're talking about each and every day. But on today's show, we are talking about Tyler Bride, who rounds out the transfer class for the Gophers. Then we have 2 new 2024 commits. And then will there be any other additions and how it all plays out for the Gophers? So be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube where we're building this thing up. Tell your friends about the show. Tell your fellow Gophers fans to come on over to Locked On Golden Gophers YouTube channel and hit subscribe. And if they're more audio listeners, that is A-okay. You can find us at Locked On Golden Gophers wherever you get your podcast. Be sure, though, to leave a 5-star review so others can find the pod. Now, let's talk about these new additions to the Gophers. This boat is getting full, folks, and this is the show where we always continue to row. So let's talk about Tyler Bride, who is the new transfer coming in for the Gophers, a cornerback. They add even more to that cornerback room and help bolster the depth of the room that was probably the most in need that we saw from the spring sessions this spring. Now, the Gophers went all in on this cornerback room in the portal since we saw it as a weaker area, and you absolutely love to see something like that as they get aggressive towards the position of need that showed the biggest over the course of the spring and in the spring game itself. I mean, there were literally folks on the Big Ten Network and whatnot that were kind of making jokes at how the cornerback, the slot corner, nickel corner, had to play against one of his fellow teammates wearing the same jersey. And so it looked confusing and kind of baffling, like he was playing for the wrong team in our spring game. So that just tells you how shallow that depth was. But the Gophers absolutely dived in and addressed it. So you've got Tyler Bride coming from Georgia Southern, where he played 463 snaps last year in 2022 at outside corner and another 159 snaps last year at the slot corner position. So he's played both. He's got the versatility. He's got the ability to be a very good depth piece for the Gophers and be a player that can help fill in, help step up if there are any injuries that come at any given position on the field when it comes to the cornerback room. So that will be invaluable for the Gophers, and having seen that this room was so shallow. Now, like I said, he brings that versatility, he brings depth, which are both areas that are helpful. But last season, he was targeted quite a bit, 53 times, in fact, and he gave up 33 receptions, which is a reception rate of 62.3%. Now, that is a little bit higher, and he gave up a significant amount of yards. I believe it was around like 486 yards total given up, which could seem concerning for some Gophers fans if you're just looking at the raw numbers. But if you dive in a little bit deeper, a vast majority of the yardage itself came from 3 games. 3 games in which he played the entire season. So yes, those 3 games might have been more rough. It might have been more difficult. It might have been the areas that you need to address in your development to continue to get better. But it also shows that in the other vast majority of those games, he was playing fairly well and holding it down in the coverage front. So there's a lot of room to work with, a lot of clay to mold there. And I think that he will be a good addition for the Gophers, an addition that can come in here and play and contribute. And you know what? The most opportune availability that he would be filling, in my eyes, is what Beanie Bishop did for this team last year. Now, could he go and win that starting job? Absolutely. If he balls out, he grinds it out in this fall, and he earns it, then I wouldn't be surprised if he takes that opposite side of Justin Wally's starting corner position. But like I said, the most valuable thing that I think he automatically from the jump brings is that versatility and being able to play all over the field, which is what we saw from Beanie Bishop last year. He stepped into the nickel role often. He stepped into some spot opportunities out on the outside when Terrell Smith was hampered by injuries here and there on the field. He is able to go wherever he is needed. He can blitz off the edge. So I think that's the type of role that you maybe see from Tyler Bride, more versatile and filling in wherever he is needed. And that is going to be extremely important for Minnesota. Now, like I said, there are 3 rough-ish outings, but outside of that, he did pretty well. He has pretty good speed and burst. You like to see that, but I think he plays aggressive and he sticks to his principles. So overall, that should bode well for him in the Minnesota system. Guys that can play within the scheme, play within what they are taught. I believe that goes a long way, and those are typically the players that you see show out and get lots of opportunities. Mistake-free football is what the Gophers defense is all about, and getting off the field quickly. So if as long as he sticks to the principles of what Coach Rossi is instilling in this defense, I think it'll go a long way to get him opportunity here. Now, this addition makes 3 total cornerbacks added by the Gophers in this transfer window of the spring, the second transfer window. And this was their biggest area of concern, like we said. So the room only had 5 true cornerbacks working in those indie sessions during the spring sessions with Coach Nick Monroe. When they would break off into their individual groupings, there was 5 of them. And I believe only 3 of them are scholarship cornerbacks. So you could see that it was a little bit sparse there. And so it'll be nice to have a bigger room with more competition as we head into fall camp. This will put them up to that 7-8 count of guys working in those drills, which will only be beneficial for everyone. Now, at the cornerback room outside, it will consist of players like Justin Wally, Tariq Watson, Rylan Kelly, Zaquan Bryan, Trayvon Jones, Tyler Bride, Victor Pless, Jordan Greenhow. Those 8 guys will be in those indie drills when it comes to the cornerback room specifically. And then most of the other players end up playing more in the safety room in the indie work because they're paired with that nickel role, and they usually do indie work with the safeties. So those 8 will be the guys playing in that outside corner position the most, from what I'm able to gather. And then from that nickel side of things, you see a Jack Henderson, a Will McDonald. Aiden Gausby might step in there at times, but he is also a safety player. Darius Green might step into that nickel at times, but also a safety player. And then Garrison Monroe could see himself in that type of role as well. So what this tells me overall is that regardless of outside or rotating inside as well, Tyler Bride will very likely see a healthy amount of snaps and opportunity. Like I said, similar to what we saw from Beanie Bishop last season at minimum. Now, it could be more than that. Like I said, if he goes out there and shows he's that guy and he absolutely wins the competition in there, he could be the starter across from Justin Wally, and we would absolutely welcome that. Whoever goes out there and earns the job, whoever gets it done essentially has to earn it. And that's what we'll look for as we head into the fall camp opportunities. Now, Tyler Bride wasn't the only addition for the Gophers heading into this past weekend. In fact, they have 2 commits to the 2024 class, bringing that total to 14 commits already for the Gophers heading into the summer, where they typically get the most aggressive. So who were those 2 new additions, and what will they bring to this Gophers roster of the future? That is what we are going to talk about coming up next. First, be sure to head on over to our friends at built.com and get a taste of the new birthday cake puffs. I have it on order right now, and I cannot wait for it to get here. Power packed with protein, not too much sugar, but just enough to keep it tasting good for you. And it it carries you over. It fills you up when it comes to needing something to carry you over after a workout, when it comes to lunch to dinner, breakfast to lunch, where you just need that little something, that little bit to put you over the edge. Well, it's power packed with 17 grams of protein. It tastes good, and it's covered in 100% real chocolate. So definitely head on over to built.com. Use promo code LOCKEDON15. That's LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your order when you head over that way. And if you cannot wait and you need them today, you need them tomorrow, you head on over to Walmart or the Sam's Club near you. Go to the pharmacy section and you will find Built Bars ready and awaiting. Now, Gophers fans, let's jump in and let's talk about these two brand new commits to the class of 2024. And I want to thank you, first of all, for making Locked On Golden Gophers your first listen when it comes to Gophers daily sports. And a shout out to all the everydayers. I'm getting those topics that you want addressed. Somebody wants us to get Daryl Thompson on the show, which we are going to go and try and make it happen. Another request for Ron Johnson. We're going to get Ron Johnson on the show sooner than later. It will happen this offseason. I absolutely believe it. So that will be to come. But tomorrow we have a guest for you as well, not from the Gophers football program, but the head coach of the women's basketball program will be tomorrow's show. You're absolutely not going to want to miss this. We touched on the coaching staff that she has brought in. We touched on how you build chemistry coming into a new program like this. And then we touched on some fun things, some this or that. Does she prefer Chipotle or Qdoba? Learn a little bit about the coach and her background tomorrow as well. And we'll talk about some of the players that have stepped up and showed out in those 5.5 weeks that they got to do some practices in during postseason play when she first came on board. You're not going to want to miss it. So be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you can check it out tomorrow. Now, two additions to the class of 2024, a wide receiver and a quarterback to the 2024 class for the Gophers. Minnesota added a pair of prospects this last weekend, one in Jalen Smith from Mankato West, a local Minnesota kid, stays home. And then you've got Drake Lindsey, a quarterback commit from Arkansas. So let's start it off with Jalen Smith. Let's talk about what he brings to this program, what he did in high school, what he will continue to look to build on in senior year. Now, Jalen Smith held offers from Iowa State, from Kent State, and from North Dakota State as well. As a junior, he caught 49 receptions for 729 yards and 4 touchdowns. He can go up and win big in the contest. He is 6'1", 180 pounds, so he's going to need to put on some weight once he gets to Dinkytown, and hopefully even a little bit as he is in his senior year this next season. Now, overall, this addition at the wide receiver position in Jalen Smith gives the Gophers of the 2024 class 3 wide receivers. On top of the 2023 class from last year had 3 wide receivers. And then you have 2 transfer wide receivers that came in or are coming in for this year in Elijah Spencer and Corey Crooms. Look, if that doesn't tell you right there, all of that personnel choices that are being made. And again, these are choices by the Gophers to be offering this much and pushing in the recruiting process this much for a lot of pass catching options. That doesn't tell you right there how they're trying to shape this thing for the future. I don't know what else to tell you. The quarterback is in tow with Ethan Kaliakmanis, and they've been adding some nice talents in that quarterback room. And then the depth and the opportunities and the skill sets in that wide receiver room continue to grow and build more and more. That should have you excited. That should at least show you and give you a little bit of hint through the disbelief, having seen this team run the ball and run the ball and run the ball, and we never pass the ball. That is going to change. You've heard it from me. You've heard it from friend of the show, Ryan Burns. You've heard it from friend of the show, Daniel House. It's time to listen because it's going to happen. Now, what Jalen Smith brings to you on the field is he has a fairly quick release package. You like to see that. He ran a sub 11 a second 100-meter dash in the track and field. And so that tells you he's got some decent speed to him. Now, he had improved that number. I believe he was above 11 seconds in his sophomore year. And then through junior year, through the progression, through the strength and conditioning, through training for other sports as well, got it sub 11 seconds. That's a huge improvement, but it also goes to show the speed that is there for this 6'1" wide receiver. He's good at selling on the double move, so he's got good body control, and you like to see that. And then he is a player that I think will be very interesting to see how his status grows over his senior year. There are always a handful of players that take bigger leaps and get more respect from the recruiting services. And maybe he could be one of those players if he can get more and more production in that senior year. So he's definitely someone to really be interested in and keep an eye on as he continues to grow senior year. And then the other player that we have to talk about is the quarterback. Minnesota has their quarterback in this class, and that is Drake Lindsey from Arkansas. He's a very big quarterback. We're talking 6'5", 220 pounds as a high schooler, a junior in high school. That is some size. That is some oomph. That is some macho man coming into the Gophers program. So he also held offers from Colorado State, South Alabama, UAB, and UNLV. Now, those schools might not blow you off the paper, but I believe Minnesota really got in early on this one. He was also receiving interest from your Baylor, from your UNC, from your South Carolina, and from your Memphis. So those names might pop off to you a little bit more, but the interest was definitely there. The talent is there, a lot to work with, and I think he can really take care of the football, which is huge for PJ Fleck and crew, because the ball is the program. They stress that over and over, and he showed that in his junior year as a starter. 3,620 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. That 37 touchdowns to 3 interception ratio, you love it. That's the chef's kiss, just voila, like you love to see it. But like I said, what he'll bring to you on the field is he has a very strong arm. He is accurate. He threw for 3,620 yards on a 67 completion percentage, which is really nice, especially at the high school level. So obviously you love to see a strong arm quarterback who can be accurate. Why wouldn't you want to add that type of talent to your quarterback room? Now, his strength plus touch on the corner route when watching his huddle film looks really nice. It's pretty impressive because his arm is strong enough to hit the deep corner for touchdown, but drop it into a bucket if a DB is pretty close. Put it into spots that only the receiver can get to. You love to see that from a high school level prospect, because that leaves a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for as they continue to develop, you continue to get better and have less mistakes, less turnover worthy plays as they grow within the program. Now, when I watch him, I think his style of play is very similar to last year's QB commit in Drew Vioto. I think they both work really well from the pocket. Drew Vioto is a very smart quarterback, very cerebral. It seems like he catches on to things very quickly, and we saw that in the spring with him picking things up and working his way into that QB3 role. So I think those two will be very good to work in tandem with each other in that quarterback room, kind of spitball, learn, grow from each other, and really push each other in that quarterback room moving forward. Now, with those two additions, that brings the Minnesota class officially to 14 commits for the Gophers in the 2024 class. Now, players to keep an eye on, because the Gophers have always been really good at making a summer splash, at really pushing in those early months of summer and getting a number of talented commits in that June area, that June, maybe early July. That is when the Gophers are typically doing their best. Now, we know the recruiting cycle is nowhere near finished. In fact, it's probably really just getting started. By the time we hit August, that's when maybe things start to slow down a little bit. You get into senior year, and then you see recruiting stuff pick up a little bit more in October, November, before signing day in late November, early December. So we've got a lot of time, folks. We've got a lot of things that can still be had, but there are names to definitely keep an eye on in the 2024 class when it comes to the Gophers. Now, Nathan Roy is a 4-star offensive lineman from Wisconsin, seems to be very interested in the Gophers, has set an official visit for June 16th, so that's a player to keep an eye on. Samuel Madu, he is from New York, a cornerback. I believe he has a pretty good relationship with cornerbacks coach Nick Monroe. His official visit is set for June 9th, so he is going to be here in Dinkytown as well. And then everybody knows about the other Minnesota commits that have not yet committed to the Gophers. I didn't say that in today's show, but the Gophers have been hitting it out of the park in Minnesota right now. I believe with that addition of Jalen Smith, you've now got about 6 of the top 9 Minnesota high school prospects committed to the Gophers, and there are at least 2 others that are interested and showing interest in the Gophers, and those 2 are Emerson Mandel, offensive lineman from Irondale, one of the top players within the state, and then Wyatt Gilmore, an edge from Rogers, Minnesota. A lot of people see him as the maybe most talented player in the state. Both of them are showing interest in the Gophers. Kai John, the wide receiver from Coon Rapids, also has an offer from Minnesota. So there could be more Minnesota players heading or staying home. And those are guys to keep an eye on as we continue to move forward into the summer months. But are there any other names we should be on the lookout for in the transfer portal that could add to this Gophers roster and finally complete this bad boy? That is what we are going to wrap this show up with coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, the final thing we're talking about are there any other names to be on the lookout for and searching for? And right now, I think this boat is getting ready to set sail in the 2023 season. Now, if there is anything else that Minnesota could be waiting on, I think it would be Markevius Brown. He would be a welcome addition and another big-time addition in that cornerback room when it comes to depth. Now, I don't know if this Tyler Bride accepting of the offer takes them out of that race, takes them out of that potential addition. But if it doesn't, I think he would be probably the last player that could be added to this roster. I think outside of him, you're probably not going to see any more additions from the transfer portal. I would love for them to bring him in. I think he has a high ceiling and a high level of talent that he would bring with him to the Gophers. But outside of Brown, I don't think the Gophers are still in play and we'll see any more additions to this 2023 roster. Now, with that, we already have a healthy look at what this roster will look like heading into the new season. But the one thing that holds true is that this cornerback room, it's a heck of a lot deeper. It has a lot more bodies into it, but it has so much opportunity that is up for grabs. And I truly believe that anybody in that room can go and get it. Now, Justin Wally is, of course, locked in as a starter. He's earned his spot. He is shown to be kind of a staple in that cornerback room through his freshman and sophomore years. Now he's going to be a junior this year, a leader in the room, a leader on the defense, and he will absolutely be a starter locked in and hopefully healthy for the entire season. If so, he will play every game out there at the starting cornerback position. But who else will be around him is the biggest question. Now, I think Jack Henderson likely has wrapped himself up in that starting nickel spot as well. There is a lot of praise and a lot of excitement when it comes to Jack Henderson. I think he'll likely be that nickel cornerback, but outside of those 2 players, I think the other outside cornerback starting spot is up for grabs, and then rotational spots, rotational snaps at every single one of those roles is up for grabs. So right now, there's a lot of opportunity for all these players that have come into the room. Tariq Watson may have the head start of this race because of what we've seen from the spring, because he got a lot of reps and opportunities. He played the starting snaps in the spring game, but nothing has been done to absolutely secure the role. There were still young mistakes made. Rylan Kelly as well showed flashes, but young mistakes made throughout the spring. So you can absolutely bet that Minnesota told each and every corner that they went after in that transfer portal, look, the starter job can be won. Nobody has that other starting job right now. You can come in here, and if you ball out and you earn it, you will be the starter. It's not on hold, on layaway for one of these guys that's already on the roster. No, anybody can go out there and get it. So all 3 transfers, Zaquan Bryan, who is a true freshman coming in, and the remaining players from the spring roster as well, mainly Tariq Watson and Rylan Kelly, I think all of them are going to be grinding, going to be trying to show out and put theirself at the top of that competition. Now, the summer is the time to get ahead of your teammates. I mean, yes, you are one team, one dream. You're looking to win as a team, but the summer is where the individuals that take those starter snaps, take those starting opportunities, that is when the time to put that work in and earn it. The summer is where it all happens. So whoever does that, whoever puts in the extra work, whoever puts in the extra study, whoever puts in the extra hard work, sweat, blood, tears, you name it, they will probably give themselves an advantage in this cornerback battle. And we've seen Coach Fleck and staff give true freshmen playing time. So that's why I'm not taking Zaquan Bryant out of this competition, because we've seen it with Justin Wally. We've seen it with Terrell Smith. So nothing is off the table. Now, cornerback has the depth and the bodies, but how can the room hold up in the Big Ten against a heavy passing team like an Ohio State or whatever Wisconsin's trying to be, or Michigan, who might pass a little bit more, or UNC with their Heisman candidate quarterback in Drake May, who is maybe the favorite to be the second quarterback taken in the 2024 NFL draft. Those are the true tests that this Gophers defense and the cornerback room specifically is going to have to face in the upcoming season. So is this room and the new bodies in it going to be able to play up to that speed and up to that level of competition? That will still be the question heading into the season. And it probably will be the number one question that we look to answer by fans, by the media, when it comes to watching that first week 1 game in August against Nebraska at home. That's going to be priority number one. Of course, you're going to say, how's the running back room shape out? How's Ethan look? What did the O-line starters end up being? We'll probably have answers to some of those throughout fall camp, but how those cornerbacks hold up will not be able to be answered until we get to the real play. So that is the number one thing we will have our eyes peeled for in week 1 and moving forward once the season hits. This is Kane Rob signing off. I appreciate you listening to the show today here at Locked On Golden Gophers, and be sure to subscribe and be sure to watch tomorrow's episode with Coach Don Plitzowite, because look, folks, if you want to get excited for a team in this Gophers athletics program, I'm telling you right now, it is time to get on with the Gophers women's basketball team. Get on while the getting is good, because I believe the trajectory is going nowhere but up. We're talking with Coach Plitzowite tomorrow. Do not miss it. Be there or be squared. This is Kane Rob signing off. Row the boat. Sky Yuma. Go Gophers.